She typed it blind. He broke my ribs. Can't breathe. Door is locked. Please help. She thought she was texting her brother. She wasn't. The man who read that message at 11:43 on a freezing Philadelphia night wasn't a mechanic from Kensington. He was the most dangerous man in the city. And he didn't call 911. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and said 2 words to the giant standing next to him. Bring the car. Nola Beckett, beaten, locked in, and running out of time, sent a desperate text to the only person she trusted. But one wrong digit sent that message straight to a man who owns the city from the shadows. Subscribe and hit that bell, because you have no idea how far this goes, or what it costs. The silence inside the penthouse on Rittenhouse Square was the kind that screamed. Minutes ago, the air had been filled with the sickening thud of fist meeting flesh, followed by the wet crunch of something giving way inside Nola's chest. Now the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the muffled wail of January wind against reinforced glass. Nola Beckett didn't try to move yet. 25 years old, and she'd already learned that moving too soon attracted attention. And attention was the last thing she wanted from Grant Harlow. Grant stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit. His reflection stared back at him, calm, composed, not a hair out of place. "You make me do this, Nola," he said, his voice so reasonable it made her skin crawl. "I work 14 hours defending people who don't deserve it, and I come home to a mess. Is a clean apartment too much? Is a dinner that isn't cold too much?" Nola tasted copper. The pain in her left side was sharp and hot, a blade driving deeper with every shallow breath. Ribs. Definitely ribs this time. Her mind detached with practiced precision, floating above the pain the way it had learned to do over 2 years of nights exactly like this one. "I'm going to the Bellamy for a drink," Grant announced, pulling on his overcoat. "Clean yourself up. We have the foundation dinner tomorrow. If you embarrass me with a bruise, tonight will feel like a warm-up." The oak door slammed, the deadbolt engaged, that heavy, final thunk she knew too well. He'd locked her in. Again. Nola counted to 120. 2 minutes measured by the throb in her side. Then she moved. A strangled cry tore from her lips as she dragged herself across the heated floor. Her phone, where was it? Grant usually took it. Another piece of the isolation game he loved to play. But tonight his rage had made him sloppy. He'd slapped it from her hand and it had skidded beneath the leather sofa. Her fingers, trembling and smeared with blood from her split lip, clawed at the darkness beneath the furniture. Cold glass met her fingertips. She pulled it free. The screen was spider-webbed, a kaleidoscope of cracks, but the glow held. 3% battery. Panic flooded her veins, cold and sharp. One text. That's all she had. If she called police, Grant would spin it. He always did. He was the golden boy of Philadelphia law. She was just the anxious girlfriend with a history he'd carefully manufactured. He owned every narrative. She needed Jessup. Her older brother ran a mechanic shop in Kensington, tough as a railroad spike and twice as stubborn. He wouldn't ask questions. He'd bring a crowbar and kick the door clean off its hinges. Her vision blurred. Pain made the room tilt. She pulled up the messaging app, her thumb hovering over the keypad. She knew Jessup's number by heart. Her hand spasmed. She hit a 6 instead of a 9. She didn't check. She couldn't. Darkness was creeping in at the edges. She typed, "He broke my ribs. Can't breathe. Please help. Apartment 4B. Door is locked." She pressed send. The little arrow swooshed away. The screen flickered red once and went black. Nola rested her cheek against the cold floor. The beacon was out. Now she just had to stay awake until Jessup kicked the door down. 6 miles away, in a private room inside the Iron Room, a members-only establishment that existed on no public record, the atmosphere was a different world entirely. Low bass hummed through the walls. The air carried the weight of expensive smoke and quiet power. Stellan Kane sat in a dark leather booth, a glass of bourbon untouched before him. He wasn't large the way a bouncer is large. He didn't need to be. It was the stillness of him, the absolute predatory calm of a man who had removed every impulsive and reckless obstacle between himself and total control of Philadelphia's underworld by the age of 34. "Shipment from the port is secure, boss," Brogan Hale said from across the table. Brogan was Stellan's right hand, a wall of a man whose scars told stories he never needed to repeat. "The Zakharov crew is backing off the territory dispute." Stellan nodded, his eyes scanning the room the way they always did, measuring, cataloging, dismissing. His personal phone buzzed against the table. This number existed for 4 people only: his 2 lieutenants, his lawyer, and his cleaner. Unknown number. He picked it up. "He broke my ribs. Can't breathe. Please help. Apartment 4B. Door is locked." Stellan read the message twice. The area code was local. The grammar was frantic. "Brogan." His voice cut low through the ambient noise. He slid the phone across the table. Brogan read it and shrugged. "Wrong number. Someone's domestic mess." Stellan took the phone back. He looked at the words again. "He broke my ribs." 5 words that dragged something up from a place inside him he kept locked tighter than any vault. A kitchen floor 26 years ago. His mother's blood on white tile. His father's belt still swinging. The sound of a woman trying not to scream because screaming made it worse. "Trace it," Stellan said. Brogan didn't ask if he was sure. He worked the tablet in silence. "Meridian Tower, Rittenhouse Square, luxury residential. Apartment 4B is registered to a Grant Harlow, attorney." Stellan was already on his feet. The room seemed to contract around him. "She texted me, Brogan. Fate doesn't ask permission." He typed one reply, his thumbs moving with cold precision. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." He pocketed the phone. "Bring the car, medical kit, the real one." "And heat?" Brogan asked, already buttoning his jacket. Stellan adjusted his cuffs. His eyes were flat and final. "Always." 20 minutes later, the penthouse doorframe splintered inward. Stellan walked through the wreckage and found Nola curled on the floor, face white, lips turning blue, arms wrapped around her own chest like she was trying to hold herself together from the inside. He crouched beside her. He didn't touch her. "You texted me," he said. Nola looked up, her vision swimming. "You're not Jessup." "No, I'm Stellan." He lifted her, carefully, one arm beneath her knees, one supporting her back. She cried out. He told her to breathe shallow and carried her toward the shattered door. They made it to the elevator. The doors opened, and Grant Harlow stepped out holding a takeout bag, his face shifting from confusion to arrogance in half a second. "Put her down. I'll have you arrested for kidnapping." Stellan didn't flinch. Brogan pinned Grant to the elevator wall before he could finish his next sentence. Stellan carried Nola into the elevator without looking back. As the doors closed, Nola whispered against his chest, "You're the Mafia." Stellan looked down at her. "Does that frighten you more than what's up there?" Nola thought about the locked door, the cold floor, 2 years of learning how to be invisible inside her own home. "No," she said. Then everything went dark. Nola opened her eyes to crown molding and the smell of antiseptic mixed with something softer. Lavender. She wasn't in a hospital. The ceiling was high. Heavy curtains blocked most of the light, but a sliver of gray morning crept through. She tried to sit up. A sharp pull in her side stopped her flat. She looked down. Her torso was wrapped in professional compression bandages. She was wearing a soft, oversized shirt that wasn't hers. "Careful." A woman sat in a wingback chair in the corner. Mid-50s, steel gray hair pulled tight, a face that had seen more trauma than most surgeons. She wore scrubs over black slacks. "I'm Petra, former trauma nurse at Jefferson. Now I work for Mr. Kane. You have 2 fractured ribs, a severe concussion, and deep bruising across your left hip and back. The split on your lip needed 3 butterfly strips. Where am I? Safe house, Bryn Mawr. Mr. Kane's orders were to let you sleep through the night. You needed it. Nola drank the water Petra brought her. Memories flooded back. The text, the shattered door, Grant's face in the elevator. Is he here? Downstairs. He's been waiting since 4 a.m. The door opened and Stellan walked in. Dark jeans, black sweater, sleeves pushed to his elbows. He looked less like a man who ran an empire and more like a soldier between deployments. He stopped at the foot of the bed. He didn't come closer. How's the pain? Manageable, Nola lied. You're a terrible liar. Take what Petra gives you. Nola studied him. The question that had been circling her mind since she woke up in his arms finally came out. Why did you come? You're a crime boss. I'm nobody. A wrong number. You could have deleted it and gone back to your drink. Stellan crossed his arms and looked toward the window. When he spoke, his voice was lower, further away, as if the words were being pulled from somewhere he didn't visit often. My father beat my mother every Friday night, like clockwork. He'd come home and take the week out on her face. I was 7 the first time I tried to stop him. He threw me into the wall so hard I couldn't hear out of my left ear for a month. He paused. When I was 10, I tried to call the police. He found the phone in my hand. He broke my arm in 2 places and told me next time he'd break my neck. Nola said nothing. She just listened. I buried him 5 years ago, but the sound of a woman trying not to scream, that never left. I swore when I was strong enough, no man would hurt a woman in my city and walk away whole. He turned his dark eyes back to her. You texted the wrong number, Nola. But you reached the right person. Something cracked behind Nola's ribs that had nothing to do with the fractures. She swallowed hard. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We have a problem, he told her. Grant Harlow wasn't just a defense attorney. He was the money pipeline for the Zakharov syndicate, the Russian operation that ran half of Philadelphia's port trade. By taking Nola, Stellan hadn't just interrupted a beating. He'd humiliated a high-ranking asset of a rival organization. The Zakharovs would read it as a declaration of war. So I started a war, Nola whispered. The war was already simmering. You just turned up the heat. 2 days passed. Nola's body began to mend, but her mind wouldn't stop spinning. On the second evening, she was sitting in the living room when the local news cut to a press conference outside Philadelphia PD. Flashbulbs popped. And there he was. Grant Harlow stood at the podium, hair perfectly disheveled, eyes red-rimmed with manufactured grief. We just want her home, he said, his voice cracking on cue. Nola has struggled with mental health issues for some time. I'm afraid she's had a breakdown, or worse, that someone has taken advantage of her fragile state. If you're watching, Nola, I love you. Come home. Nola's stomach turned so hard she nearly vomited. He's lying. He's making me sound insane so no one will ever believe me. Stellan clicked the television off and sat directly in her line of sight. He's building a cage out of cameras. If you speak up now, you're the hysterical girlfriend off her medication. If you stay quiet, he plays the grieving partner. He controls the board either way. He always wins, Nola said bitterly. He thinks he's the smartest man in the room. That's his weakness. Smart men get sloppy when they believe no one's watching. That night, Stellan left. A call came in. One of his operations on the port side had been hit, an arson job. 2 of his men were in critical condition. A message from the Zakharovs, written in fire. With Stellan gone and Brogan stationed outside, Nola couldn't sleep. She wandered into the study and found a stack of files on the desk. Intel Stellan's people had gathered on Grant. She knew she shouldn't look, but 2 years of being told she was too fragile, too anxious, too broken to handle anything had left her hungry to prove she was none of those things. Before Grant, Nola had been a forensic accountant, a good one. He'd forced her to quit 6 months into the relationship, claiming the stress was bad for her health. What he really meant was that her skills were dangerous to him. A woman who could read money trails was the last thing a man laundering millions needed sleeping beside him. She opened the first folder. Bank statements, shell corporations, transfer authorizations routed through offshore accounts. Her trained eye moved across the numbers like muscle memory, and then she stopped breathing. A signature on a transfer authorization for $4 million. It wasn't Grant's handwriting. It was hers. Nola Beckett. The room tilted. She grabbed the desk to keep from collapsing. She had never signed that document. Then she remembered. 6 months ago, Grant had been frantic about updating insurance paperwork. He'd flipped pages fast, pointing at signature lines. Here, here, and here. She hadn't read what she was signing. She'd trusted him. He'd opened offshore accounts in her name. Every dollar the Zakharovs ran through Grant's firm was being washed through her identity. If she went to the authorities, she wouldn't be a victim. She'd be a convicted money launderer. But that wasn't even the worst part. The accounts were biometric locked. The Zakharovs couldn't move the funds without her fingerprint or her physical signature on new authorization papers. She wasn't just Grant's scapegoat. She was the key to $40 million the Russian mob couldn't touch without her. That's why they were burning Philadelphia to flush her out. Not because of pride, not because of territory, because she was worth more alive than every warehouse Stellan owned combined. Nola closed the folder. Her hands were steady, steadier than they'd been in 2 years. The fear was still there, but something else was rising underneath it. Something hotter. Something that felt like the first spark before a fire catches. She wasn't just a woman who'd been beaten. She wasn't just a wrong number. She was sitting on top of a $40 million bomb, and every dangerous man in Philadelphia wanted to be the one holding the detonator. Nola was standing in the study with the folder still open when her phone buzzed in her pocket. The phone Stellan had given her, the one with only his number programmed into it. The screen didn't show Stellan's name. It showed unknown caller. Her thumb hovered over decline. Every rational part of her brain screamed to ignore it. But something deeper, something sick and twisting in her gut, made her answer. Hello, Nola. Not the voice she expected. Not Grant. Not Russian. It was raw, panicked, and painfully familiar. Jessup. The name came out of her like a prayer. Jessup, oh my God. Are you okay? Where are you? I don't know, Noel. His voice broke. She heard a dull thud in the background, and Jessup groaned, the sound of a man trying not to scream. Some guys came to the shop. They said they need you to come back. Another voice took the line, heavy, accented, cold as a steel blade dragged across ice. Miss Beckett, we have your brother. He is a strong man, but strong men still break. Don't hurt him. Nola's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the desk. Please, he has nothing to do with this. He is family. That makes him everything. You have 2 hours. Pier 17, Warehouse 9. Alone. If we see Kane's people, your brother dies. If you are late, your brother dies. If you call anyone, your brother dies. The line went dead. Nola stood motionless. The phone shook in her hand so hard she nearly dropped it. Her ribs screamed with every breath, but she couldn't feel them. Couldn't feel anything except the image of Jessup, her big brother who'd raised her after their parents died, the man who taught her to change a tire and throw a punch and never let anyone make her feel small. Tied to a chair somewhere with blood on his face because of her. She looked through the study window. Brogan was posted at the front gate, back turned, scanning the perimeter. If she told him, he'd call Stellan. Stellan would mobilize. The Zakharovs would see them coming from a mile away and put a bullet in Jessup before the first SUV cleared the gate. She had to go alone. Nola moved fast. She grabbed a heavy coat from the mudroom, shoved her feet into boots, and slipped through the side door into the garage. Stellan's fleet of vehicles sat gleaming in the dark, all locked, all keyless. But at the far end sat a catering van that had delivered supplies that morning. The driver was somewhere inside the house. The keys were in the ignition. She didn't think. She climbed in, wincing as her ribs caught fire, started the engine, and pulled out. The tires crunched on frozen gravel. In the side mirror, she saw Brogan spin toward the sound, shouting, reaching for his weapon, but she gunned it through the gate before the electronic lock could engage. The van fishtailed onto the icy road, and Nola gripped the wheel with both hands, knuckles white, heart slamming so hard she could feel it in her fractured ribs. She was loose, and she was driving straight into the mouth of something she knew she might not drive out of. The ride to the port was a blur of gray sky and dirty snow. She rehearsed nothing. There was nothing to rehearse. She had no weapon, no plan, no leverage. Only the knowledge that her brother was bleeding in a warehouse because she'd hit a 6 instead of a 9 on a shattered phone screen. She parked the van at the edge of Pier 17. The waterfront was a graveyard of rusted shipping containers and skeletal cranes. Wind cut off the Delaware River so hard it stole the breath from her lungs. "I'm here!" she screamed into the wind. "Let him go!" A metal door on Warehouse 9 groaned open. Grant Harlow stepped out. He looked wrong, not the polished attorney from the press conference. His eyes were wild, his collar undone, a manic energy radiating off him like heat from a cracked engine. 3 men in dark leather flanked him. Behind them, deeper in the warehouse shadow, Nola could make out a shape slumped in a chair. Jessup. "Nola," Grant said, spreading his arms like he was welcoming her to a dinner party. "You look terrible, darling. Has that animal been feeding you?" "Where is my brother?" "Inside, alive. A few bruises. Nothing compared to the embarrassment you've caused me." He walked toward her, the charm peeling away with every step, exposing the thing underneath that Nola knew too well. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The press, the police. My clients are extremely unhappy. You froze their money." "You froze their money," Nola spat. "You stole my identity. You put $40 million in my name without my knowledge." Grant stopped. A flicker of something, surprise, maybe even admiration, crossed his face. "So you figured it out. I always said you were sharper than you let on. Yes, the accounts are yours, which is why I need you to sign a few documents. Then you and Jessup walk away. Simple." "Liar. The second I sign, we're both dead." Grant shrugged. The mask was fully off now. "Maybe. But if you don't sign, Jessup dies right now. Slowly. While you watch." He grabbed her arm, the same arm that still carried bruises from the last time he'd grabbed her, and dragged her toward the warehouse. "Get off me," Nola twisted against his grip. Grant raised his hand to strike. The sound was something Nola would remember for the rest of her life. A sharp, suppressed crack, like a whip snapping through frozen air. Grant's raised hand erupted. Blood sprayed across the snow. A bullet had gone clean through his palm. He dropped to his knees, screaming, clutching the ruined hand against his chest. A voice cut through the chaos from somewhere in the dark maze of containers. Low, unhurried, and cold enough to freeze the river solid. She said, "Get off." Stellan Kane stepped from the shadows, tactical vest over his suit, rifle held with the ease of a man who'd been born holding one. And he wasn't alone. From every corner, rooftops, crane platforms, behind stacked containers, figures emerged, dozens of them. Brogan was there, face murderous. Red laser dots appeared on the chests of the 3 Russians before they could reach for their weapons. "Don't," Stellan warned. "My people are bored. Give them a reason." The Russians raised their hands. Stellan walked toward Nola. He didn't look at Grant sobbing in the snow. He looked only at her, and his eyes were blazing with something between fury and relief. "You ran. They had Jessup. You think I wouldn't have found him?" Before she could answer, Stellan gestured to Brogan. "Open the warehouse." Brogan and 2 others kicked through the side entrance. Moments later, they emerged supporting a limping, bloodied, but breathing Jessup. Nola ran to him, wrapping her arms around him as gently as her broken ribs allowed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Not your fault, Noel, Jessup rasped. But whoever these guys are, I like them better than your boyfriend. Then Grant, bleeding, desperate, half-mad with pain, screamed a single word into the dark. A name. A signal. The warehouse behind them erupted. The explosion threw Nola off her feet. Heat and shrapnel and a wall of sound so massive it turned the world white. She hit the ground hard, felt Stellan's body cover hers, shielding her from the debris raining down like judgment. Gunfire erupted from the east side of the pier. A second wave. The Zakharov boss, Ilya Zakharov himself, hadn't trusted Grant to handle this alone. He'd brought his own army. Smoke swallowed the dock. Muzzle flashes strobed through the black. Stellan hauled Nola to her feet. Can you run? Yes. They sprinted into the maze of shipping containers, bullets sparking off metal inches from their heads. Stellan was down to half a magazine. Brogan's voice crackled through the earpiece. Pinned at the east gate, thermal optics closing in. They were being boxed in, pushed toward the water. Nowhere left to go. Then Nola saw it, the crane control panel mounted on the container beside her. And an idea hit her so hard it almost knocked the pain out of her ribs. Give me 30 seconds, she said, pulling out her phone. We don't have 30 seconds. Make it 20. Stellan raised his rifle and fired twice into the smoke. Nola's fingers flew across the screen, bypassing the shipyard's firewall, accessing the automated crane system. The overhead gantry groaned to life. The massive magnetic clamp descended behind the Russian line and slammed into a stack of empty containers. The impact shook the ground like an earthquake. Containers toppled in a chain reaction, crushing the path behind the Zakharov soldiers, throwing metallic dust into the air, blinding every thermal scope on the dock. They broke through the gap, but at the edge of the pier, a figure stepped from behind a concrete pillar. Massive. Fur coat. A heavy revolver aimed directly at Nola's chest. Ilya Zakharov smiled. Clever girl, but cranes are slow. Bullets are not. Nola held Zakharov's gaze. The revolver was steady. Stellan had lowered his rifle. One wrong move and the bullet would find her chest before he could blink. You want the money, Nola said. Her voice came out steady, steadier than she'd ever heard it. 40 million. I can transfer it right now. She held up her phone. One tap. Zakharov's eyes flicked to the screen. Greed, that ancient, predictable hunger, tightened his jaw. Bring it here. Nola walked forward. 1 step. 2. Close enough to smell the stale cigarette smoke clinging to his fur coat. Close enough to see the broken veins mapping his nose. Close enough. The transfer code, Zakharov demanded. Now. Nola tilted the phone toward him. He leaned in. Just a fraction. Just enough. She whispered, Look up. She tapped the screen. But it wasn't a transfer. It was the shipyard's floodlight.